So this is the review that I wasn't going to do. I recently reread The Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. It's obviously not the first time I read it. That wasn't why I wasn't going to review it on Goodreads. I thought this is a book that's very well known and it's been around for such a long time. It felt like reviewing it was almost redundant because it's so well known, but it's been a few days since I finished it. I keep thinking about it, and after all, this is the Omnivorous Reader Challenge because I read omnivorously. So, Rachel Carson is someone I completely heart. The first two books of hers that I own, The Edge of the Sea and Under the Sea Wind, you can see that they've been through a lot. I originally read these back in Melbourne many years ago. They were part of what convinced me into doing a marine biology degree, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So the first time I read them, I didn't know that much about the marine environment. I've been reading them ever since. I always get more out of them. The writing is spectacularly beautiful and delicate. Rachel Carson began her career as an aquatic biologist in the US Bureau of Fisheries, and she started writing about nature, I think, full-time in the 50s. Her talent as an author is wonderful. Some people obviously just have it, and she does. If I can't be on the beach or under the water, then probably reading about it with someone who does it as well as she does is the next best thing. I hadn't read The Silent Spring though. I knew about it. Everyone knew about The Silent Spring. It's one of the books that was written that first brought to the attention of the public just how dangerous pesticides were and just how ecologically fatal they were being used the way they were in America. Specifically in America, because Rachel Carson was American and her examples are primarily set in America. I didn't read it for fun for a long time because environmentally aware writing used to make me very angry when I was in my teens, but I did read this book during my university degree. It made me furious, angry, the feeling of futility as you watch humanity through arrogance, greed, and willful ignorance devastate the world around us. So because of those strong emotions, partly was why I thought I wasn't going to review this. But I kept thinking of it. And it occurs to me that there are probably people out there like me when I was younger who know about the book and what it contains but haven't read it. I think this will be my first review posted in 2024, and what better world to put it into. It's like, yes, Rachel Carson was specifically highlighting the indiscriminate use of pesticides and how they were wrecking the environment. But there's plenty of other avenues of greed that are wrecking our environment. And in Australia, in this period between Christmas and and the New Year, we've got fires devastating West Australia, we've got floods devastating the East Coast, and we've got storms. Australia doesn't normally get tornadoes, we just had one here on the Gold Coast. The environment is something that should be beloved and cared for in the way that Carson wrote about it, as something beloved that needed caring for. Okay, so obviously not the first time I read it, but this reread was unique in that I listened to the audiobook rather than reading the actual book. The narrator's name is Susie Berneis, and she did an absolutely spectacular job. Narrators for audiobooks can be hit or miss. This is a better than 10 out of 10 narrator though. Her voice was perfect, it was calm, it was well cadenced, it was beautiful, and at times it was quite passionate. I don't know if she actually has a passion for the subject matter that she was reading, but if not, she is one of the best actresses I've ever heard. I can't imagine a better narrator for this book. I'm sure that any other time I read Silent Spring, I am going to be imagining Susie's voice reading it to me. So, this is an excellent book. It deserves more frequent rereading than I give it. In the introduction, it was interesting. It mentions that Carson herself did not want to write this book. She recognized that it was a book that desperately needed to be written, but she herself didn't want to. She made a number of attempts to find other people who would write it. None of them paid off. No one wanted to be involved in anything this dramatic, I guess. And eventually she wrote it herself. It faced a certain amount of backlash from government organisation and of course the chemical industries and their marketing claims. They were making huge amounts of money out of it, and she was basically condemning the things that they were doing. Her research was good enough that any attempt to sue her or force withdrawals of the book or the claims it was making, I believe every single one of them failed. It's a hard book to read in many regards. Because of her passion for the environment, she talks about issues where every single fish in a river is killed off by DDT spraying. Not just this generation, but the next generation, if we generations before the fish in that stream ever survive. It talks about robins in a university somewhere in America that's known for its robins, every single one of them dying through bioaccumulation as their insect prey have been poisoned so thoroughly by the bioaccumulation in the insects, and so the robins die. And it's hard to read because, of course, we now know the dangers of DDT and of aerial spraying. But you can't, if you read this book, you can't but be aware that there was more knowledge about it at the time. It wasn't ignorance so much as greed that promoted this. A huge amount of money was being made by chemical companies. And I mean, your average kindergarten student these days is going to be aware that if you poison insects, the good insects are going to die too. It doesn't take a genius. But money, right? So as a non-American, there are a couple of places I cheered on here. Because I didn't take notes through the book and I hadn't particularly planned to review it, I can't point to the specific locations of events, but the overall knowledge, there's a point at which the United Kingdom started spraying for pests. Local gamekeepers presented their specialised knowledge that all the animals were dying, the birds were dying through bioaccumulation, just like in America. And if you ever wanted a good justification for having the royal aristocracy hierarchy, I would say that the Silent Spring, through no intention of its own, gives the best justification. In America, whole ecosystems were being devastated, humans were being poisoned, but money was ruling the choices made by council and government levels, so nothing was done to stop it from happening. In the United Kingdom, the gamekeepers reported to their bosses that birds were dying, and the UK said, oh, we can't have that, and stepped in. The fact that big business would have wanted to keep on spraying and poisoning and killing animals came in secondary to the fact that the preserves were being damaged. So, yay, go UK. At that moment, I was owning my United Kingdom citizenship. If it's still valid. It probably isn't. It's probably run out. She also talks glancingly about the fact that certain imports of poison to Australia and New Zealand were legislated against far, far sooner than anything was legislated against in America. And again, yay, I'll own my Australian citizenship there. Probably our closer links to England were what allowed us to step in and ban DDT earlier than perhaps America was, and acknowledge the various resistance to pesticides that were being seen. So this book, The Silent Spring, is credited with doing a huge amount for continuing non-poisoned existence on Earth, America particularly. At the time it was written, environmental issues were excluded from mainstream political conversation in America. With Carson's encouragement and this book, I believe, she describes the pesticide program from 57 that was designed to control the fire ants, which is topical here because we're now combating fire ants as well as electric ants. It was totally ineffectual. It killed huge amounts of birds, livestock, and I think it even killed some humans. It completely failed to kill the fire ants. But the government was largely refusing to face that up. Protests started on a wide scale following this book, and while fierce criticism did come out as a result of it, and Carson at the time was recovering from breast cancer, so that must have made it incredibly hard for her. High levels of interest became more and more common in America, and the Silent Spring, the book, The Silent Spring, is largely and often credited with awareness of bioaccumulation, which also wasn't really on the table, resistance around the world to using pesticides irresponsibly, and a widespread awareness of the delicacy and beauty of ecological systems and how they need to be preserved. It's kind of unfair, but I'm going to end this review with a quote from Sylvia Earle, another marine biologist who's written some amazing books, which I might reread and review here. She says, "No blue, no green. Kill the ocean, you'll kill the world." And Rachel Carson was doing everything in her power when she wrote this book, almost regretfully, to continue to allow life on Earth, which, you know what, big business doesn't care that much. It's down to individual people trying to control the greed to save the environment. So this is the review I wasn't going to do because it's kind of grim. But 2024 is on the horizon. The world needs all the help it can get. The ocean needs all the help it can get. If you haven't read The Silent Spring, it's interesting looking back at the things that were being protested and that now we're protected against. This should give us all heart, all those of us who care about the environment, that the things that we're campaigning against now may in a few decades be the battles that we won. So yes, for everyone who cares about the environment, read this book. For everyone who thinks that the environment doesn't matter, you need to read this book even more.